Hello and welcome to Make It Happen with Will Polston. I'm Will Polston. This is episode number 132, and in this episode I'm joined by Lee Evans. Lee is a high-performance life coach at High Performance Growth. He joined the army at 16 after his mother committed suicide a year previously. Following the prestigious British Commando course, he earned a Green Beret at 18, with many years serving with tours around the world. Having worked with multi-million pound business owners, professional athletes, and this year coached over 300 military leaders in the British Army, Lee will be sharing his valuable insights into how you can tap into a high level of high performance that you've previously not experienced or sustained. In Lee's words, my clients increase productivity on average 20%. Now, imagine doing that whilst regaining personal and professional life balance. That's what I do. So in this episode, we're going to be discussing the 7 pillars of high performance.
So Lee, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Will. You just spent a lot of time saying thank you to me, so thanks for having me.
No, absolute pleasure. And so for everybody, I'm probably going to say this quite a few times, so I'm going to put a bit of colour to this. For those of you that are not watching this on YouTube, Lee's wearing a shirt that says something positive, and I'm sure that there's definitely something positive that's going to come out of this today for you listening, and I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation because, as you just heard, Lee is a high performance coach, as am I. So I think we're going to have some very interesting conversations around our different methodologies and ultimately how we get results for each other. And Lee's got an opinion, which is that a powerful coach combined with a powerful process times by commitment to action is what creates a breakthrough in beliefs and performance. So I'm looking forward to hearing how we can help some people listening today to start to have those breakthroughs. But I just want to start with Lee. What's high performance?
Yeah, well, high performance, scientifically anyway, defined is success over the long term consistently, whilst also maintaining health and building positive relationships. So it's a kind of opposite to the common high achievement where people throw themselves into work, they do really well in one area and everything else falls apart, you know? So it's the habits, practice, principles that keep that thing happening.
And I think that's really, really important because so many people, they get an outcome in an area of life, whichever area of life that might be, to the detriment of something else. And I suppose where we're both very much of the same opinion, it's about getting outcomes that you want. And obviously you just shared the definition, but in kind of a holistic way, making sure that all areas are empowered as opposed to one being at the cost of another.
Yeah, 100%, because otherwise you think, you know, why are you doing that thing? It's like, well, what is it for? It's, you know, you're using your life to get the thing, and your life's kind of expiring as you go along, you know, and obviously relationships are what make us happy. That's the thing. We know that it's depth in relationships, you know, that make us happy. So many people, and you'll see them as well, they get, it's balance really, isn't it? You know, it's the balance is wrong. There's lots of energy applied to work usually, and then they don't have enough energy left to be a good parent or to kind of, you know, be emotionally present or for your partner or spend quality moments and all of that. They're too busy kind of in the things that, you know, they think are going to make them happy, but actually the thing that's making them happy is kind of there every day waiting for them, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I one of the things I'm always interested in with people working in this space is how they came about to being in doing the work that you do and loving it in the way that you do. So how did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, the brief version of the story was I lost my mother when I was 15. She took her own life, and that obviously kind of changed everything in my life. I didn't know what to do, so I joined the army, and then I was in the military for 25 years. That basically taught me a huge amount about leadership, values, relationships, you know, progress. But that thing you touched on at the start, the process of change, that's where I really first saw it. So I came in as a young lad, you know, didn't have much confidence, had lots of ego to cover all of that up, and basically I experienced a process. There were people who were in effect coaching me through this process that was proven. All I had to do was commit myself to it, and I experienced a change. I felt more confident. I kind of had more experiences, and all of that happened to me. And then 10 years into the military, I became that kind of facilitator, which was the first light bulb moment for me, where I kind of saw a version of me 10 years ago turn up, not very confident, ego, all of that. And then 12 weeks later, having gone through a process, they were young men, shoulders back, heads up high, and I thought, I love that. It literally lit me up, and I was like, I love that. And that was the first moment. And then there've been a number of other moments in my life. I had pain-free surgery, no anesthetic, a number of times, because I discovered the power of the mind, and I was fascinated by it. And it was a kind of step 2, if you like, of the first part. So once I'd done that, I became a therapist for 10 years. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I was searching for, how do I do more of this? How do I get this change? How do I develop people? How do I learn about myself? And it kind of, as is you keep pushing towards a certain area, you start seeing more clearly where that area is taking you, and you keep going down to that area. And then kind of left the military after 25 years, started as a therapist when I first left, but it evolved into high performance coaching because I kind of loved the forward momentum. I loved the therapies in the past. A lot of the therapy is bringing someone from there to now so they can actually experience their life and start to move forward. And I realized, working with athletes mainly is where I realized it. I loved the forward momentum, the goal orientated kind of aspect, the high energy that comes with that, which is what led me to then high performance and coaching. And kind of that's what I do every day. And I love it.
So I've in the past spoken about people going from dysfunctional to functional, but then functional to fantastic. So that's that piece that you're working in is functional to fantastic. What is that next level? Because one of the other things as well that we've both experienced is that a lot of people, when they hear the term high performance, they don't identify with it. They go, well, I'm not a high performer. I can't achieve high performing results.
Yes.
So if someone right now is listening, thinking that, well, I'm just an average person. I don't do high performance. What's your advice to them?
Yeah, my advice to them is they're listening to a story that has been formed in their mind that, is a belief they might believe, but it isn't necessarily true. There's so many beliefs we have. I didn't believe that I could have pain-free surgery at one point, but I tested my mind to the point, I learned the skills, I kind of developed that belief. So a belief is something you develop, it's not something you have to build it and prove it and test it and all of that. So I would say to anyone thinking like that, ultimately, in the kindest way, you're wrong. High performance is available to anyone and everyone. It's not tainted or shaped or influenced by gender, experience, kind of background, where you live in the world. It's nothing to do with any of those things. It's a human thing. Everybody can perform at a high level. And it's holistic, as we talked about before. So if you're a parent, you can be a higher performing parent, right? If you are a leader of people, you can be a higher performing leader of people. Everybody can be a high performer in their life. So that's the message really, is don't kind of limit yourself in that box, because it's a story that has built up that isn't true, And we know it's not true. We have evidence it's not true.
And I know hypnotherapy has been a big part of the work that you did in years gone by. I think it was about 10 years you spent doing hypnotherapy. So how much of that, because I know you've just mentioned stories, and ultimately the story we tell ourselves is it is something that has a significant impact on what we do, because we can sometimes know the obvious thing to do, the strategy, if you like, that's in front of us that we need to approach, but then it's what's going on in the mind that's preventing us from doing it because of some disempowering story, or some people call it a limiting belief. So how do people start? What's your advice before we go on to some other more pragmatic stuff? What's your advice if someone's got a story they've been running, or a limiting belief that they know that's holding them back? What's a process that they could use to start to overcome that?
Yeah, Okay. And it is a process, like you say. It depends where they are, right? If they want to, you've got to interrupt a pattern. A story is a pattern, is something that's running again and again and again, and it kind of just goes around its own loop, right? So if you're not interrupting that pattern, it's just running, and that's it. And you think this you think this is what you think, but it's not. It's your thoughts going around in a pattern, right? So the first way to do it is to interrupt the pattern and have a process of processing thoughts rather than the worst thing people can do is try to ignore negative thoughts or pretend they're not there or just think positively instead. It's kind of not going to make any difference, right? Because the limiting script schema becomes part of somebody's identity. It needs interrupting and processing, and they can do it by asking just a few questions very quickly. Just a few questions. They're like, oh, hold on. And then you start to actually realize in a moment, oh, this isn't true. I don't enjoy it. I could do this instead. And that comes from processing thoughts just by asking a few questions very quickly, and that's something I do with people early on, is arm them with some of these skills and tools so they can kind of see what they're actually doing to themselves when they keep thinking that.
And it's interesting you say that, because there's two things you said: asking questions and people being able to see for themselves. Because in your sort of breaking the patterns of belief and performance, you talk about having a powerful coach. Now, my definition of coaching is just a form of communication, but doing so with a form of questions, more often than not, to get people to see things they hadn't seen before, because you can't see the whole picture when you're in the frame. So what are some examples of questions that people could be asking for themselves when it comes to these beliefs to be able to interrupt the pattern?
Specifically with limiting ideas and thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one I would ask myself is, does this thinking help me in any way?
Mm-hmm.
And when you kind of think, let's say let's have the common underlying thought, right? I'm not good enough. That's basically what most people kind of suffer with at some point in their life, right? I'm not good enough at whatever, parent, not good enough as that person, whatever it might be. So let's use that thought to process. Does this thought help me grow, develop, move forward in any way? And you have to answer the question fully and completely. It's called processing, right? We don't just say no. We say, no, in fact, this thought holds me back, keeps me stuck, doesn't move me anywhere, right? So they would write that down on a thing and they would see it clearly and go, oh, then they start realizing, okay, I'm basically holding myself back, right? Question 2, does this thought, do you like it in any way? Does it bring you any good energy and joy, right? No, in fact, I hate it. It makes me feel anxious, scared, nervous, frightened, afraid. I don't want to do anything. Okay, they're writing that down, right? My thoughts are blah, 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 blah. Third question, how do you know this thought is true now? Right? They're like, well, I tell you, the only answer people can come up with is something that's happened before in the past. But that's not anything to do with now or the future, right? So this is the story. They're like, well, before somebody said this, or I failed at this. Okay, so you failed. So where's your evidence that you're not good enough? Everybody in the world who's achieved anything good has failed more than you, right? So you start to realize, okay, I don't have any evidence. When you push it enough, then it's like, okay, I don't have any evidence. In fact, I'm making it up. It's a fantasy. It's my imagination running wild with fear, right? So now we know it doesn't help me move forward. I don't like it. It's not even true and I'm making it up. And now you get to the final question, which is, do you have a choice in this moment to spend time thinking something else, some other possibility, using your imagination in a constructive way instead of a destructive way? Yes, of course I have a choice. What is it? And you start writing it down. I could think, well, if I try again, I might do it this time. Or, if I keep going, you could think whatever you wanted to. You could direct your mind to positive thoughts. You could direct your mind to all of the good things you have done in your life, which you have lots of evidence for, which does make you feel good, that does help you move forward, right? So you could start thinking about real things that have actually happened and the good things that you've achieved and all the wonderful experiences you've had. And So those 4 questions, if you start using them systematically and properly, somebody actually processes properly and writes it all down, within days, people feel completely different, feel more empowered, feel happier, feel more in control of their thoughts. And I've seen it happen so many times within a matter of days, so there's so much we can do if we will just think, get the right kind of guidance, get the right questions, get the right support.
I think they're fantastic questions, and I do highly recommend for anyone that's listening to this, driving along in the car or listening to it whilst you're doing your exercise, stop and go back, grab a pen and paper and work through those questions if you've got something that's limiting you and impacting you in some form or another. So one of the things that I know that you're really big on is helping people change, but consistent change. So it's not just, I'm going to change temporarily, it's not that whole new year, new me, they do something for a few weeks and they fall off the bandwagon. For people that want to change, whatever that pattern is, or that behavior, let's say that behavior. So it might be something as simple as changing the way that they eat, changing the way they exercise. It might be changing their behavior around doing sales, for example, if they don't like doing sales and they run a business or whatever it might be. What's that process that you go through with people to do?
Yeah, so that's a really great question, and there's so many different factors to that. But to break it down into how do people change, basically consistently, right? How do they make a consistent change? Well, firstly, they have to practice a lot. So practice means, what are you doing every day to try to develop that consistent change? Consistency comes from being consistent, which sounds really obvious, but, the more you try and do something, the more consistent you will be, feel, and all of that. So practices are the first thing to develop. It's like, what are the practices? Do you wake up in the morning and reach for your phone instantly? That's a practice of practicing being very reactive, right? And then that reaction will move into your emotional reaction. You'll feel on the back foot. You'll be allowing everybody else's priorities immediately into your day, and you're practicing doing that. So that's a practice, right? If you get up in the morning and reach to your phone, you're practicing being reactive. So it's about developing the right practices that I start to practice. It's not like, one of the biggest failures people make in change that I've seen is they find this thing and they go, right, I'm going to do all of that now, right? And then within 5 days, they stop because they've overwhelmed themselves with loads of other things, right? So you've got to start where you are and start being consistent in one practice, right? So let's say in the morning, you start to be consistent every day. You start practicing, getting up without your phone next to your bed, going outside, taking some deep breaths, drinking some water, and feeling grateful for your life. You could practice doing that every morning, right? That could be a practice which then develops into you leading some change. So practice is the first thing. We have to practice, and we have to have the right practices, and we have to remove the kind of wrong practices that we're getting better at all the time. If somebody, like we talked about then, is in this loop of thinking like that, they're practicing being negative in their own mind. They're practicing feeling reaction to that. So practice is the first thing. Get the right practices and do practice a lot. The second thing is the tools that enable that practice. So for instance, I'm so serious about it that I kind of created my own planner, which is a planning tool for my life, right? How I keep all these practices in place. So mindset as a practice would be me asking questions. We talked about questions. Questions have answers. So if I ask the right questions every morning in a practice, which is in my planner, I now am being proactive for this day. Today I was visualizing how I want this interaction with us to go. I'm thinking about another podcast I'm on this afternoon. I'm coaching some people later. This morning, I've already visualized how I want that to be, how I want the energy to be, how I want the connection to be. So the second thing is the tools that enable you to practice. That might be live breathwork sessions you join on a guided thing every day as a habit and a practice. That's something I do. It may well be, other tools that you have. So practicing is one. Tools that enable that practice to be consistent is two. because otherwise you try and remember everything, right? And you're not going to remember everything because there's loads of new things coming at you all the time. So we need structure to our practice, which is the tools. And the third thing is the people. You've got to surround yourself with people who are on a growth journey with you, who lift you up, who are positive, optimistic in their energy, right, and have good practices and want to grow, rather than surrounding yourself with the people who drag you down, kind of are the, you know, the Harry Potter dementors of life, where they suck the life out of everybody. You know, the people is the other key factor of change, being consistent, spending more time with those people who are doing that thing, who are talking about that stuff. You know, you look at Weight Watchers as a famous example. You know, loads of people that come together, that talk about their goals, that share each other's journey, that have a plan, that have a process, they have tools. It works if somebody will just get into that thing and take a chance, you know. And the thing that stops change often is fear. You know, people, like we just talked about, fear, I'm not good enough, I won't be able to do it, it will be a disaster, people will think this of me, etc., etc. You know, so I think hopefully that makes sense. People, practices, tools, that's how you start to really, you've got to start building structure to those things, and then that enables you to be more consistent, right?
Absolutely. I think people is huge. I mean, you run a community of positive driven, like-minded people. I run communities of positive driven, like-minded people, because being able to share the challenges, the hardships, but also to be inspired by those people as well. I love being around inspiring people that make me challenge my own status quo. You know, could I be doing more? Could I be progressing and developing? So I 100% agree with all of that. There's two things that I want to drill into. One of the things you said, which was a form of sort of stopping, let's call them negative behaviors, but you touched on it, but I think it's really quite important, which is not just stopping it, but replacing it. So rather than saying, well, I'm going to stop picking up my phone at, I don't know, whatever time you wake up in the morning and checking emails before you even got out of bed, it's replacing that with something more positive. So something that's going to feed you and fire you up and put you in a positive position. And then you also mentioned about journaling. So you use journaling as a tool. You've obviously got your journal. What are some key questions that you ask yourself most mornings that set you up to win?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I always start with the hardest question, I think, in the world for people to answer, which is, what do you love about yourself? Right? I think that question is something that you have to work hard to practice at and develop and see clearly, because so many people, if I ask that question of people struggle, right? They're like,
yeah.
Oh, well, because they say, what do you mean? That'd be egotistic for me to say I love myself, so I hate myself instead. But that's not a good replacement, right? It's, people don't understand or focus enough on finding out what's amazing about them, you know? So I start with that question every single morning. I have done for about 15 years of my life.
I love that. I really, really do. And something that really stood out for me, and look, I work in this space, and I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I'm constantly learning, and something really hammered home for me. So I do a practice called, I create something called a self-love list, which isn't actually the things I love about myself, but it's things that I do that I love. So you might want to call it a self-care list, you know. So the things I like doing by myself and the things I like doing with other people. And each week I monitor that and I look at it and go, right, have I done stuff that I love doing, things for me this week, you know? But I saw something on social media, I don't know, 6 months ago, and it really hit home for me, which was, I asked you to write a list of things that you love, how many would you have to write before you wrote yourself?
Yeah, it's important, right? I agree. And, you know, with zero ego, the best relationship I have in the world is the one with myself, right? And it's something that I have cultivated and developed and rewritten the script of and reprogrammed myself to feel not just very comfortable with, grateful and happy with, you know, the relationship I have with myself. And I think that is the single area for anyone to focus on, really, is this relationship with themselves, you know. And I I started that by asking myself, what do you love about yourself? And I struggled with it. And I was like, I don't know. And it was always about other people, right? And so we run these 30-day challenges in our community. And there's one going on now where 2 people are going through this. Within, I reckon, 5 or 6 days, that's when it starts coming a little bit. And people are like, they're getting more comfortable actually using the word. You know, they start at the start of it and say, oh, this is really awkward. And they start talking about what they're grateful for, right? I'm saying, no, I'm not asking you what you're grateful for. I'm asking you what you love about yourself. So then they go through a bit more gratitude, a bit more grateful for, and then suddenly they're like, you know, I love that I stopped assuming about somebody the other day and actually had a really positive experience with them, and I was wrong. I love that I challenged myself in that way. And as soon as they say that, I'm like, yes, let's go. We've started, right? There's another 20 days to go. Let's go. And they come out the end of it and they're like, feel completely different and lighter and all of those things. So yeah, that's the first question I ask. And I have a set of questions that are my mindset questions, basically, that set my, this is the other thing about mindset. It's a practice. Everything we're talking about is a practice. It's like, mindset is a practice of setting your mind, right? So I set my mind by how? Asking questions. So I think clearly about the day. And because otherwise we just kind of go through the motions, you know, we're not conscious. We're kind of just automatically, subconsciously reacting to life. And it's only in that questioning process that we start to see clearly and start to shift the way we feel in a moment. You know, you can change the way you feel. Just one thing to touch on about this area about what do you love about yourself. The most important skill that I don't think anybody ever really, some people do, very few people get to be very good at, is the ability to be kind to themselves. You know, this ability to be kind to your own self. I think it's a skill that should be taught in school and should be taught all through life. And I don't think hardly anybody, I think I don't know the statistics, but a very small percentage of people that I've experienced in life are very good at being very kind to themselves, you know? And I think it's an unlocker to develop that skill unlocks so much for you in your life.
I've found, I'm interested in your opinion on this. I've found that actually a lot of high performers, people that have got significant results, are very harsh on themselves. They are their harshest critic in a lot of instances. And that's what has driven them to achieve the results that they've got. Is that something you've experienced much?
That happens, right? And I'd say probably lots of people do it that way. But along the way, they have huge amounts of stress. They kind of have terrible kind of interactions in relationships with people. And they fall in, that's the high achievement trap. It's like what we were talking about earlier. I fire myself into, I grind myself into the ground, you know, and I will push so hard that kind of, you know, and yeah, I understand that, but I don't want to experience that. That's not how I want to do it. I want to do it while I'm feeling happy, feeling energy inside myself, you know, sleeping well, which most people don't. I'm not kind of, you know, who are in this bracket when they're in this grind, they don't sleep very well. They're kind of living on coffee. Sometimes drugs is fueling them as well. And I've, you know, experienced some of these people, and the people who are, I think, most successful are successful as they do that. You know, they're successful in their life as they do that success. So they can still work hard. They can still push themselves. They can still challenge themselves to grow and be better, but they don't have to do it in a way that's beating themselves up, basically, you know. Is my philosophy on it anyway.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that, and I think it's Tony Robbins' quote, isn't it, that success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. You know, and as cliche as it is, enjoy the journey. It's what's that place that you're operating from being, whilst you're doing the doing and then having the having, which is can be deemed as the experiences as well as the outcomes that enable you to enjoy the process, as cliche as it might be.
I think to do it the other way is to take life for granted, right? And to just say, well, I know I'm going to be here in 3 weeks. Nobody knows that, right? And, there's a number of lessons in my life, one losing my mother, one in Afghanistan, number of people where I know now, they've lost their legs or they're kind of dead, and there are families and parents and all that. And it kind of makes you think every day is important, right? And I'm going to grind myself into the ground for these 2 years. So then at the end of it, maybe I'll be happy, maybe, but I probably won't if I do it that way. Because who says I'm going to be here tonight? It's only when you have those experiences where you've experienced death, I suppose, that you think, oh, hold on a minute. I'm kind of just taking my life for granted, but it's not granted.
Very, very, very true. So I know that you studied extensively. You've worked with some of the world leading authorities when it comes to personal development and professional development. You spend a lot of time learning about the human mind with Dr. John Butler. You've spent a lot of time and learning from the likes of Brendan Bouchard, who is regarded as sort of one of the leading high performance experts worldwide. And I'm right in saying that you, I believe it's yours, have a sort of 7 pillars to high performance growth.
Yes. Yeah. So that's the system that, you yourself have been doing this a long time, right? After 15 years of serious practice for yourself, you start to see the dots join, and you start to see a new way that somebody else hasn't actually thought of. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. The 7 pillars. I'll put these 7 things together in my practices and my habits. Everything elevates. So the 7 pillars came out of me being very serious about wanting to not just learn from other people and learn from experiences of clients and coaching, but learn from my own challenge to try and be better, and the 7 pillars came out of that. And basically they are, if you think about them, they take care of relationships and energy. So the first 6 pillars are about you and your energy. And the 7th pillar, which is connection, is about relationships with other people, as well as with yourself, as well as with the moment, with a mission. So those 7 pillars, basically, I've found to be completely holistic, and there are no holes that I can find, to the point where my book is going to be called that. There's 7 pillars, 7 chapters. And that's a lot of the work that I now bring into the coaching I do. It's, there's military experiences, there is the therapeutic background, there's the high performance coaching structure, which is very scientific, and then there's the 7 pillars within all of that is me. That's my unique kind of way of moving this forward.
So what are they?
Breath is the first one. I learned right from the start of my therapeutic world that the breath is the gateway into the mind, into performance, into relaxation, into meditation, into self-hypnosis, into anything that you want to kind of change. And it's also the quickest way of impacting your system, right? The breath. We can do so much with it. We can heat it up, we can slow it down, we can do so much. So breath is the first, and it's developing practices around all of these. Sleep is the second. Okay, it's obvious, but so many people are not getting it, enough of it. And there's a big consequence to that. It, but people are risking so many different diseases, and they're influencing their own behaviors in terms of craving bad food and all of that stuff, and shortening their life, right? So sleep is the second. Exercise and movement is the third. So you can see I'm standing up. That's part of my practice, is to always be standing and moving all the time. But there are practices around movement and exercise. Nutrition and hydration is the next pillar. Obviously, what we put into our body is fundamental to our energy, how we feel, everything, right? Our lifespan. So they're the kind of first 4. Then there's psychology and mindset as a pillar. So developing very good practices about how you consciously direct this thing called your mind, how you use it for yourself. Cold is the 6th pillar. So everybody's heard about Wim Hof, right? The kind of cold shower thing, how the benefits come from that. And then connection is the 7th, which really is, like I said, connection with people, connection with yourself, connection with the moment, connection with a mission, a purpose, and a kind of meaningful life. So they're the 7 pillars. And when you start building practices in each one of them, what I love about them is it's like a bridge. If you have mutually supporting pillars on a bridge, and that bridge becomes very strong, and it can deal with all the traffic going over the top of it, there's no problem, right? The bridge is strong because it's got all these pillars holding it up and mutually supporting each other. This is the same for us. If you want to be highly resilient, highly charged in your energy, very focused, happy, this is your bridge. The 7 pillars of the bridge, they all support each other. You learn to breathe very well and practice breathing, you'll be able to sleep better, right? That starts to knock on to itself. So one kind of, as the tide rises, all the boats lift, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk a lot about the terminology I use is having a North Star in your life, which is like an ultimate goal, something you're striving towards. It's not just a short-term objective. You may deem it to be your life's mission. It's an outcome that typically is so big you never actually achieve within your lifetime, but you're striving towards it as part of that process.
Yeah.
Across the pillars are goals and having outcomes that people want, something that's important in high performance as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, 100%. The psychology pillar is where this fits, and mindset, right? So this will be about, what are your goals? Do you have them written down? Are they here for the year? Why are they important? I think the other thing is people have goals and they don't even know why they're their goals, So understanding the motivation behind that. So that very much sits. But there's so many things that spring out of my mind as you say that. There's vision, how values support a vision, purpose, legacy, how you're kind of building your legacy every day, and what it all means. So yeah, there's a huge amount of that into the psychology and mindset kind of pillar.
For sure. In terms of the mindset, let's talk about the mindset pillar specifically. Then you mentioned a few things. Visualization. You even said, even prior to coming on to this this episode, visualization was something you were doing, but not just visually seeing how you wanted things to go, but how you were feeling and utilizing that element of the process. So for people that maybe are unfamiliar with visualization, what is it? How do you do it? And how do you use it in a way that you find that it works for you and your clients? And what are some of the mistakes that people make maybe when it comes to visualization?
Okay, that's lots of questions about one thing. I just got to hold them in my mind. The first mistake that people make with visualization is to believe that they have to be able to hold a clear, solid picture in their mind. And that's a mistake. It's nothing to do with pictures. Some people will be able to, imagine, right? Imagination and image, they'll be able to hold a clear image of something. Some people won't. It's not about that. It's about developing an awareness. This is what it's about. Visualization is about becoming aware of a possibility, right, that exists in the future for you, and you experiencing it, not necessarily seeing it. You might see it, you might not see it. It's about experiencing it in all its flavors, right? All the senses. So how it feels, what it looks like, how it sounds, all those kind of, so it's about an awareness. The one mistake is that people think they have to be able to hold a picture now, because I can't hold a picture clear in my mind, which most people can't for any length of time. Now I can't do visualization, right? But that's not true. So that's some of the mistakes. Another mistake is to think that you can't do it. Everybody can visualize, everybody is imagining all the time. People who worry the most are the best visualizers in the planet, because they're always imagining what's going to go wrong, or how bad people are going to think, or whatever. So everybody can do it. It doesn't have to hold pictures is the mistakes. How do I use it? I've used it in my life in different ways. It started with self-hypnosis, was basically this powerful visualization to the point of having pain-free surgery, right? With no anesthetic, no pain, invasive into the nerves and all of that. So that was a process. Self-hypnosis is a process of imagining a future, right? And imagining it so powerfully that you believe it. And as soon as you believe it, now it's true. It's reality is just beliefs, right? People, they might think, well, they believe this, so to them it's true, but it's just their psychic reality. So visualization is a way of developing and imagining and building a new belief that you can feel the effect of, that you can act on, right? And you can see evidence of. So there's different ways of doing it. You know, for instance, if we just close our eyes now, you don't, you know, we can all, anyone listening to this or watching this, if you close your eyes, you can now become aware of a park bench, right? You become aware of a park bench. You don't have to see it. You can become aware of it. Somebody might think, well, you know, what's the color of that park bench in your mind? Play along with me here, Will. What's the color of the park bench for you?
Brown.
Yeah. Okay. Close your eyes again for me. When we do that, we kind of take out all the stresses, all the cues that are coming out of the visual cortex in our brain, and we allow ourselves to kind of go inside a bit. So that brown park bench, what else is remarkable about it in your mind?
What's remarkable about it, as in, what's just something I notice about it, or
what's different about it? Where is it? Where is there someone?
It's on the side of a path overlooking a park.
Okay. Is there wind blowing? Are there trees around?
There's some trees. There's lots of grass. There's sort of a bit of water further down. It's a slightly worn bench. It's not recently painted, yeah, there's a few.
Great. So let's just imagine now you've been sat on that bench, and now you're going into a packed stadium of people, and you're on a stage, and you're the keynote speaker. How does it feel? What's the energy that's starting to come?
Yeah, full of energy, vibrant, excited.
Yeah, it's exciting, right?
Yeah.
So when you go onto that stage, you can just build this thing, right? So you can open your eyes now, unless you want to carry on with it. But the point is, right, it becomes very powerful when you start to learn the skill of directing your mind. You can go into a completely different reality that still exists, right? We're just choosing to make it exist, and we manifest it. So visualization is huge, especially for athletes. I work with a number of professional athletes. Visualization is huge. You know, they either go in visualizing that they're going to go to the pre-race briefing and they'll feel not as good as that other person who's been racing really well and feel down, or they start visualizing themselves walking in there confident, you know, listening to all the things in their own bubble, protected from everything else. They start visualizing all of that thing and they make that thing happen, you know, and they start feeling it. So visualization is a huge topic. I'm probably rambling a little bit. There's a huge topic here, right? But you've just got to start practicing thinking about, with your eyes closed is a good idea, thinking about things you would like to happen in your life. That's basically the 101 entry into visualization, if it makes sense.
Love it. Well, look, I think that's a very, very great example of the power of using the mind. You know, you said that it fits into the psychology pillar, and visualization is huge, absolutely huge, and I highly recommend that people definitely take to testing it and play with it and have some fun with it, because it is a great way of creating an experience in the present. I define it as the difference between reality and actuality. So actuality is what is going on, and the reality is our experience of it. It's a bit like if you're in a room, the temperature can be 21 degrees. For one person it's hot, the other person's cold. One person's reality is it's hot, the other person's reality is cold, but the actuality is it's 21 degrees. And you can play with that and feel those feelings, as you say, to cultivate that, which is a much nicer place to be able to move on from. We could talk all day, Lee, about high performance and go into these types of things. But people have been, wow, this is intriguing. I love the sound of this guy. I want to learn more. Where can people find you? Where can people get access to you and learn more?
Yeah, the best way to do it is my website, which is highperformancegrowth.com. So people can just click on there and they can contact me through there. Basically, I'm on all the social media platforms, LinkedIn being the main one. But yeah, that's the best way to go, is get on my website, highperformancegrowth.com.
Fantastic. So we'll pop that in the show notes, and then you can head to that, guys, and go and get access to that. Definitely go and connect with Lee. Like you say, LinkedIn, head to the website, and I know that you've got some resources and things that people can get access to should they want to find out a little bit more. Lee, thank you so much for joining me. And guys, go and take action on what it is that you've taken from this. If you're not already, come and join us in the Make It Happen community on Facebook. Let us know what you joined and what you gained, should I say, from this podcast with Lee. Lee said about getting yourself around like-minded people. We've got over 5,000 positive driven like-minded people in the Make It Happen community on Facebook. So come and join us there and let us know what it is you've taken from this episode. So Lee, thanks again, and look forward to catching up very soon.
Thank you, Will.
And everyone else, until next time, make it happen.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Make It Happen with Will Polston podcast. Make sure you join Will's free Facebook group, the Make It Happen community. Please support the show by subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Google Play. Share this episode with at least one friend you think would benefit from it, and give Will a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts. Until next time, make it happen.